Hello and welcome to Camp Xtras. In 1999 and the early 2000s, there was a cartoon that was widely popular, Nickelodeon's SpongeBob SquarePants, a character known and loved by many. Characters from the series have appeared in many games, but one of the first was SpongeBob SquarePants SuperSponge for the PlayStation. I played through it recently, and let me give you a little history and my opinions on the game. All footage was captured off of a PS2, and let's go ahead and hop into the history of this one. I feel like SpongeBob has gone into the public consciousness enough that most of you know the character. But in short, just in case you don't know, SpongeBob is a series created by Steve Hillenburg that started in 1999 and still runs to this day. It stars a sea sponge named SpongeBob and his sea creature friends. It was highly popular upon release and still remains culturally relevant today with memes, games, and movies. I was at the right age in 1999 and I ate up SpongeBob in this era. Games, coloring books, toys, I had to have them. And this lasted for years. I even had a bedroom that my parents painted and put SpongeBob stickers on the wall to give me a SpongeBob-themed room, and I was a complete SpongeBob kid. Though I never played SuperSponge. This was an early wave of SpongeBob games, with Nicktoons Racing on the same console being his first appearance, which I actually owned that one and played the crap out of it. And I'll be honest with you, there is not information when it comes to the actual development and release of SuperSponge. It looks to have been started sometime in 2000 and was announced in April 2001. It was to be published by THQ and developed by Climax, who had been making games since the 80s and did a lot of licensed titles and handheld games. And that would make sense since this game came out for the Game Boy Advance as well. With little fanfare at many outlets, SuperSponge released on September 20th, 2001 in North America for PlayStation, with it coming in November for Europe, which was also the same month that North America and Europe got the Game Boy Advance version. I played through the PlayStation version recently, and let me tell you about my feelings on it, starting with the plot.
Oh no, not you again. Just keep the noise down. What do you want?
It's my best friend Patrick's birthday, and a signed photo of his favorite superheroes would be the best thing ever.
In this game, you play as SpongeBob, and it's your best friend Patrick's birthday, and you want to get him the best gift you possibly can. So SpongeBob's first idea is to get an autographed photo from the superheroes Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, though they are annoyed by this request and send off SpongeBob to retrieve things in dangerous areas like volcanoes and prehistoric caveman times, facing off against giant bosses like huge jellyfish. And once you do all of these tasks, you can finally get that autograph. I think this story is very mean, but in a funny way. Like, this guy just wants a signature, and he has to risk life and limb in order to obtain it, and it's kind of brutal. If anything, that idea feels very close to an episode of SpongeBob. SpongeBob risking himself for his friends, with the absurd humor of fighting giant jellyfish along the way. I kind of like it, but it's very loose and not very riveting, but it works for a children's game. It does a really bad job of shoehorning in characters from the show like Mr. Krabs and Patrick just popping up in the most random spots in this game. It's kind of nonsensical, but I don't hate it. It's not a game focused on its story too much and offers a basis for your actions. It does a good enough job of feeling close to an episode of the show, which I can appreciate. SuperSponge is a side-scrolling platformer mixing 3D graphics and a 2D plane to make something 2.5D. You hop around from platform to platform and you attack enemies. It's pretty simple all around, but it gets jumping wrong, which jumping is essential for any platformer. The jump is stiff and extremely twitchy. Do not do any type of correction while jumping, otherwise it will be completely ruined. This game offers so many jumps that just have to be hit perfectly. Otherwise, you will miss it completely, and it just never feels right, and you miss a ton of jumps in this game because of it. There's also a lot of blind faith moments in this game, asking you to jump into the abyss and hope you land somewhere, which is never good game design. For a kids game in general, I felt like this game was a bit too challenging, but not in a good way. The pieces of this game are never congruent enough, and it feels like a hodgepodge of elements and ideas to make something that's just a slog and tough to get through. Enemy placement is all over the place, and it feels like a gauntlet. Throw in that you have wonky jumps, and it makes for something just frustrating to get around in, especially when you play it slow. This asks you to collect spatulas as health, acting like Sonic, where if you get hit, spatulas fly everywhere, and you have to collect them in order to take another hit. The invincibility frames last long though, and if you just run through levels, you can make it out alive because it's long enough to collect spatulas after getting hit. So this game rewards and works better when you just rush through it, so you never quite enjoy the platforming at all. Not that there's too much to enjoy with the gameplay though. The game does try to give you a lot with an attempt at variety with different items you can pick up. You can get a jellyfish net and launcher that shoots out jellyfish you collect. The range on the net is completely weak and useless. It just doesn't work. And the launcher is cumbersome, though the worst item in the game is the leaf blower. With the blower, you pick up coral and you shoot it at breakable walls. And you have to stand still to use it, and sometimes you have to use it in these cramped corridors with enemies. The placement is so bad. You move slower, and it's even more stiff when you have the leaf blower on your back. It's floaty and slippery, and it's just a cumbersome thing to use. I wish it was perfected more, and with that, I wish these items got more use. You usually pick up an item, and you use it immediately, and then you can just drop it because there's no more use for it afterwards. They place items in such specific points that you know you can just drop it, walk a bit more, and you can just get the same item when you need to use it for 1 second later. It's just missed potential everywhere. I do think there's at least some glimmers of hope. It's playable enough that you can still beat it, and some levels have great design, like the fish hooks level asking you to ride on hooks going to the surface, or the bubble-filled volcano level. Yet the controls, the placement of enemies, and generally the camera being too close makes this a tiresome trek to the finish line. It's just a very flawed side-scroller that needed more time in development to perfect its controls. The music in this game is pretty cute. It has some catchy rhythms and jams, and like the plot, captures the energy of the show, having this Polynesian feel with light guitars and a fun rhythm. I don't think there's anything that I would return to, but it does have a good rhythm for the game, keeping things light and easy. I like that it doesn't play into gaming tropes and instead works to make each level feel very relaxed. The sound effects, though, are miserable in this game. I don't think I can handle SpongeBob yelling "ow" ever again. Things like this, bubble noises, and jumps all rehash the same noise, and it's painful on the ears. I felt like just a few extra noises for each of these things could have made this a little less painful. At least the voice acting is decent, with a lot of voice actors returning, and you can tell with Ernest Borgnine, Tom Kenny, Mr. Lawrence, and many more. Though they don't get a lot of lines, it's at least authentic, except for Mr. Krabs, which is obviously not him and it's really bad.
SpongeBob! Now listen, boy! There are dangerous surfaces that none shall pass unless they have squeaky boots.
The graphics of this game are a bit odd to me. I feel like in some ways they can be rough. The background and foreground sift together in a hard to look at way. Yet I do like the variety here. It jumps around to so many different environments with some unique assets all around. It's all bright and colorful too, which matches the cartoon's vibe. I also kind of like the pseudo 3D style. SpongeBob looks like a drawing, but he'll make 3D movements, and it's the same for a lot of enemies. I think it makes it stand out a little bit. It's not beautiful or anything, and it's definitely a lower quality standard for a late release, but I think it at least looks unique, which counts for something. SuperSponge was not a great playthrough for me. Sure, I like the music and visuals, but the gameplay is key and it's rough. Jumping never feels good, the movement is not right, and the overall level design is weak. I never really had fun with this game, and it became a bit of a chore to get through. If a game is not fun, then I can't recommend it, and I don't think I'll ever return to this version of the game. On my ranking list of PlayStation games covered on the channel so far, which is only 2, this one goes in at number 2. Need for Speed, despite its flaws, is still far more replayable than this one. So this is the part where I give you the Metacritic score, but this game doesn't have one. Despite being in the top 200 best-selling PlayStation games ever made, with over 1 million copies sold, outlets just weren't covering this one. I'm guessing it was due to the lateness of this release in the console's lifespan, though PlayStation Magazine did give it an extremely small review, calling it bland and awkward and giving it a 2 out of 5. Like I said though, this game did very well, and that's a major testament to the power SpongeBob had in the era. Even if it wasn't covered heavily, kids were just going to see this cover in the store and buy it immediately. It was kind of perfect timing too, because many young kids like myself hadn't upgraded to the next gen yet, and those last kid games were the bread and butter of PlayStation in its twilight years. If you head over the backlog, you'll see a fair amount of nostalgia for this one in the reviews, though it holds a 2.3 out of 5 average with 700 plays. Some people love the music and have good memories, but most of the reviews say it's mediocre and not great. Those SpongeBob games wouldn't live with this legacy, and there would be some great ones on the horizon after this. But that does wrap it up for this review. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm. Be sure to check out my main channel, Camp Xbox, for just retro Xbox content. And subscribe to this one if you want to keep up with more general retro content. Comment below with any memories of this game, loved it or hated it, I would love to hear from you. But I'll see you here next time at Camp Xtras.